All right, folks, we are live here with a special guest, Alex Miller. It is really great to be talking to you today, Alex.
Hello.
It's kind of full circle. You know, I don't know if you remember when I first, I know you talked to a lot of people, but when I first reached out to you, it was a couple years ago. I was trying to go to the conj, and I think you connected with Kim, who made it happen. That really just kind of started my journey in the Clojure community and was a pivotal moment in my life. So I'd like to thank you for that. I appreciate that.
My pleasure.
So how you doing? You keeping busy, huh?
I am extremely busy right now.
So to give some context, we are getting ready for Strange Loop right now. There's also, you have a presentation at ClojureD that I know that you were finishing up, and you said that we get a sneak peek of some new features. Can you tell us about that a little bit?
Sure. So I will keep some of it still. Well, I don't know. When are you going to publish this?
Let's say 2 weeks from now.
Okay. So I've been working on a number of things for the last, for over a year now, since probably February of last year. And I think finally that cluster of features is gonna come home and be available to everybody. But it's been a long journey. We've done multiple sort of redesigns of what we're doing and things like that. But some of the problems we're trying to tackle are basically that there is not really a batteries included build solution for Clojure. There are obviously lots of great tools people have been using for a long time, like Lanigan. And then, the Clojure CLI covers a small part of that, but not everything that everybody needs. Mm-hmm. So we've really been looking at how we could plug that gap, and we in the Clojure team and the people in the Datomic team, and we all feel this acutely on a daily basis, and so we've been looking at how we could provide more build tooling for the Clojure community as part of the, you get the Clojure CLI and you've got enough to get started doing things. And so there's actually a bunch of different facets of that. And we, in the process of working on this, found all these different little things that we wanted to do. And so we've been slowly doing those things over the last year. A lot of those came out of that work. Things like being able to execute functions and some of the support for Git dependencies that we've been working on. So the idea is to really sort of turbocharge all that and put it all together into into a package that lets you start from Git dependencies, and they could be dependencies that need building even, and to provide Git dependencies tell the Clojure CLI how they should be built. Have the Clojure CLI know how to run those commands and do a build. Have built-in build support for all the things that all the basic things you need. Things like compiling Clojure, compiling Java, and making jars, making Uber jars, and copying resources around and things like that. But it's really all just a library. It's just Clojure code. If something you need isn't in there, then bring in whatever you do need. So it's really trying to double down on using Clojure as the language, using deps as our data, using builds as programs that are also Clojure, working from source. All these things are very much in line with things we've been doing in Clojure since day one, and I think just takes it a lot further.
Yeah. Well, that sounds really great. That it sounds to me like you're kind of solving I'll put this in quotes, a problem that people tend to, I guess, cite with getting into Clojure and ClojureScript is I always hear, oh, the tooling, oh, it's so hard, oh, I don't get it. And it sounds like you're really working to solve that so we can, lower the gateway and let the general community get in here, guys. It'll be just as easy as Python, but better.
Well, it is easy. I mean, I think it is easier than Python, having tried to do Python things recently. So that's just my opinion.
Way easier than JavaScript, as far as, because I do a lot of Clojure script. I'm like, have y'all seen JavaScript? Jeez,
Yeah.
It's but yeah, hopefully that'll help bring Clojure to the people. Programming for the people. Clojure.
Trying to bring more batteries to the starting experience, for sure.
Mm-hmm. So has that been an influence of, I know that Cognitect was, well, I guess it's not recently anymore, but somewhat recently in its lifespan, acquired by Nubank. Is that something that y'all spearheaded? Was that something that they spearheaded? Was it a collaborative process?
Well, I can only speak to a certain percentage of that, but so Nubank started about 8 years ago. I think they're coming up on their 8th year anniversary, and they discovered Clojure and Datomic very early in the company life cycle, and really just decided this is the right way to build things, and we're going to leapfrog every one of our competitors by just like pushing full into this, immutable data and Clojure and doing it this way. And they have succeeded wildly at that.
Well, they get it. They get it. You get it. I get it. They get it.
So they've built an entire company around that as the tech stack, and it's fascinating. And Cognitect had been consulting with them for a couple years, both on Datomic issues. They're the biggest Datomic user in the world. And on Clojure things, because they're also the biggest Clojure user in the world.
Wow.
So I think at some point it just became, for them, it became Nubank's, anytime you can go out and, reduce the risk of your tech stack by, acquiring the people making it. I think that's a wise strategic move. So I think it was, from their perspective, it was just a very smart strategic move. And it also has huge benefits for Clojure and Datomic, in my opinion. And we've been extremely happy with how everything has turned out and how things are going with it. So,
oh, that's so good to hear, because I wanted to ask you about that. It is, I know a big thing that I want to ask you about that has happened since then is Cognitect sponsoring open source developers. Can you tell me a little bit about that story in the beginning of how that happened and the conversations and what your goals with that were? Disclaimer, I'm one of the sponsored developers.
Yeah, so this was really spearheaded by Rich Hickey, more so than anyone else. And it's something we had been talking about for a while, and we've actually been doing for a couple of years, but not in a very visible way. So we have at times, I mean, going back to the very, I've been at Cognitect for about 8 years, and even going back to then, we were supporting, some of the development efforts for Counterclockwise, the Eclipse Clojure editor, which isn't active anymore, but at that point was definitely a good contender. And we did some development support on that. We supported some of the core typed work for years. We've supported David Nolan and Mike Fikes and their work on Clojure scripts and for a couple of years now. So there's a lot of that stuff has been happening. It's just that we had never really talked about it much publicly. So, but the real idea is that Rich Hickey really wants to support people who are creators and are out there doing creative things in the Clojure community. And it's not about funding a particular thing they're doing with some expectation of return. It's about finding people doing good work and supporting them and letting them find their own path to do what they want. So it's it's really a no strings attached kind of a thing. And if every company out there was doing that and funding open source developers that were making things important to their business and important to their community, it would be we would live in a different world. The people would, for our, we're funding people, hundreds of dollars a month. If there were 10 companies funding people doing that, that's enough to make a living on. You're at that point, doesn't take that many companies out there funding things at the level that we are. I mean, we're making a 6-figure a year investment in this as a bet on our community and the people in our community, and that they will go off and make great things. And I think we've seen that already. So, I mean, there are definitely people out there who are using those funds to support their work and doing great stuff with it. So, yeah, I mean,
yeah, I think it's also super inspirational, because, people see you doing that, and people really idolize Cognitect. They really idolize you and Rich and Stu Holloway and all of you. And so to see you being role models, saying, hey, this is the kind of behavior we want to support. These are the kind of people we want to support. This is the kind of, the kind of attitudes we want to see uplifted in the community. I think that's really important. It's inspired me, because now I love the little GitHub sponsors button. I find myself hitting it a lot more, lately. And it's great that you're paying it forward. I think that the effects, just trickle down to so much more than just those.
Well, I mean, every company out there today is dependent on open source. I mean, every single one of them, and they're getting a ton of value out of that and not paying anything, and that makes things unbalanced we've got this rampant maintainer burnout sort of problem, and you've got people who are fantastic, innovative creators who are just like, I just can't deal with it anymore. It's too painful, and the rewards are too small. I'll just go do something else. So,
right. Well, people like being thanked. That's I mean, a basic human emotion is to feel. A lot of times, I joke about conference speaking and whatnot. A lot of times it's loneliness driven development. You develop something, you work so hard on it, and it's so great, you want to share it with the world, and then all too oftentimes you make this great library, and then you check, no stars, 2 stars, 3 stars, and when you've made this great product, but you don't feel like there's no recognition for it, there's no incentive to keep making great products. Great libraries, great content.
That's the thing, is it's fine for people to just be recreationally doing open source, but also developers should be able to make a living making a thing that they really care about, and that they're putting a normal job's worth of effort into. There should be a way for you to make money doing that. If there's companies deriving that much value from what you're doing, and there, I mean, there's tons of examples of that out there. So,
absolutely. Well, okay, changing gears a little bit. What does the typical day in your life look like? Because I bet it's very different from from my Twitter thread that's been accused of being a fanfic, a Clojure fanfic. I just have an imaginative mind.
We enjoyed that. We passed it around. We enjoyed it. I was going to try to get a picture of me in some sort of a Clojure barbecue, bib or something at some point.
Yes, and that's when we get Bork Dude. We can get the Bork Dude band. We can have it'll be great.
Yeah. I like it.
I'm so glad. But I'm sure y'all's life varies very differently from that little, fairy tale I told there. What's a typical day look like for you? And not just work stuff. All the
Yeah. So I've got 3 kids in high school. And actually my daughter graduated 2 days ago. So I have 2 kids in high school now, one going to college.
Are you a cool dad?
I don't know.
I see. That's a guitar behind you, yeah?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, do you play guitar?
I do.
See, you're a cool dad. I think that's one of the things. It's you're a cool dad.
I play until one of them tells me to turn it down, and I figure that I've done my duty. So I don't play it very well, but I play it pretty loud. I'm good at that part of it. But yeah, so I get in the morning. It's a bit of a chaotic mess. Fortunately, they're all in high school. They drive, so they are pretty good at getting themselves up and getting each other up and yelling at each other. And getting out the door. But that's usually how my day starts, is with the cacophony of 3 teenagers getting ready to go and leaving the house.
Throwing a Pop-Tart at him at the way out the door, like, eat some toast. Like,
it's not my problem.
Your hunger figured out.
We've raised very independent children, so that's awesome. Not my concern. I'll take dinner, but other than that, the meals are on their own. So they get out the door, and then I get up and make coffee and get to work pretty quickly, usually in my jammies. I've actually been working remotely now for 8 years, and I worked several years remote before that. And so I am quite used to working at home on my own pace. But the Clojure and Datomic teams meet jointly first thing in the morning. Well, first thing in the morning for me. They're mostly East Coast based, so it's a little later in the morning for them. But we just kind of do a stand up and talk about yesterday and today kind of stuff. And while I don't pay attention to all the minutia of the Datomic team's goings-ons, I am kind of passingly familiar with what kind of stuff they're working on day to day. And occasionally those interact. Occasionally they have things that are they have things about tooling or Clojure or something like that it impact my day, but that's not too common. But one of the cool things about Cognitect joining Nubank has been that we've had more resources, and we've expanded both the Datomic and the Clojure team. So it's getting to be an actual sizable team there. Stand up takes a little longer. We've had to be a little more efficient on stand up to keep it tight.
What are your views on? See, I think everybody has their different views, regardless of what your company does. You can have a daily stand up, a weekly stand up. I would hope that you do stand up at least once a week. Every other day. If you had it your way, what is the ideal stand up?
It probably depends on the team what the ideal is, but we do daily, and I think that has been working for us for a long time. And I think I've I've had a fairly independent role for a long time, just because I work with Rich and Stu, but they also work on Atomic and other things as well. So there's a lot of times where I'm just doing things that need to be done independently. And so we didn't always do a daily stand-up, and it has moved. We moved to that a few years ago, and it really made a big difference in being my connectedness with other people on the team, and helping to keep me on track, because then I'm accountable to, people are expecting to hear from me every day what I'm doing, and so I feel accountable to them, and so I think it's been really helpful to do that.
What is, it's funny, I realized that, what is your official title in capacity? Because I just, I think of you're what's your title? Alex Miller,
I actually don't have a title. I've been asked to create one a number of times, but I've had a hard time defining it. So we've never really have actually created one. I'm sure I have some title in various computer systems, but I don't actually know what it is. So,
well, you're a community leader.
I don't want to be a community leader, so I don't want that title. I really don't see it that way. I see it more of a, or sometimes you'll see community manager or leader. Like, I don't like those teams. I'm not managing the community. I'm not leading the community. I don't want to tell anybody in the community what to do. What I do want to do is be a communicator from the Clojure core team to the community, and vice versa, to bring the concerns of the community to the Clojure team. And so that's kind of how I see my role is it's sort of that ombudsman kind of a role of sitting in the middle between two groups. And, Rich did a lot of work very early on, sitting in IRC and answering questions and talking directly to people using Clojure. And it was a vital thing for him to get that feedback from people about how they were using it, how they wanted to use it, and where they were having problems and things like that. But that just doesn't scale to some point. At some point, it's just pure interrupt and you don't get any work done. So at some point, it was necessary for there to be more layers, and
core liaison abstraction layer.
Yeah. That's kind of how I think of it. As I'm the channel sitting between the two components. And it's now that Focus has joined the core team, it's been great to have somebody else to expand that bandwidth a little bit. So it was really kind of eye-opening when he joined. I really went and tried to write down all the different things that I do every day, so that he could do some of them and help me with them. And it was a long document. So I kept thinking of more things that I just do, and I do them just habitually to the point where I've been doing it for so many years now that I don't even think about all there's a process for when contributors join and when things come into Jira and when things go into Ask Clojure and things in the build box. And I just kind of do all those things and on a cycle and don't even really think about it that much. So it was kind of it was kind of good. So I'm still trying to figure out the best way to hand off some of those or share those responsibilities with him.
Yeah, it can be hard. And so, all right. So I assume you work. I would like to hope that you work until 5, but you probably work until a little bit later, I assume.
I actually usually finish by 5 or sometimes even before 5, but I work probably, I'm sitting at a computer working on Clojure stuff, maybe 40-ish hours a week. It's not excessive. But I do, look at Slack and look at Twitter and stuff in off hours and weekends and all that kind of stuff. So that definitely, adds up in a different way, I think. And then I'm usually, my wife runs a dyslexia center. So she is usually not around in the afternoons and early evenings because she's tutoring or helping to manage tutors. So I usually am the one making dinner and or going out and getting dinner or telling a child to go out and get dinner, depending on what's going on.
So I was half right. You are the cool dad in the barbecue with the apron making
sometimes.
Dinner. Yes.
More often than not, I'm the one making dinner. But and then later in the evening these days, it's all Strange Loop, so it's kind of the other job. And I actually work 90% time at Cognitect and have done that for years. So I get a half day a week that I use for Strange Loop work and occasionally, augment that as needed during the busy times.
Well, yeah, I guess now's a great time to get into Strange Loop. What a great known conference. Everybody just everybody knows it as just such a novel conference, not like any of the other, I don't want to call them boring tech conferences, but so I think that how you pick your talks is very interesting because a lot of other conferences will, pick speakers and say, hey, will you speak? And then the speaker will, figure out a talk, a presentation to bring it. And the process for Strange Loop is a little bit different. Would you be willing to walk us through it real quick?
Yeah, and we do invited talks, so it's always a mixture of invited and open call, and we've always done that. They both are they both are really important from my perspective. Having done lots of different conference stuff, like the invites are important because it allows you to ask people who would just never think to submit a talk. Somebody who is doing something really interesting, but they're busy doing it. They're not going to go. They're not out looking for opportunities to speak about it. They're busy, right. And so it gives you the opportunity to ask those kinds of people. It gives you the opportunity to push things in a diversity direction. So it gives you the opportunity to, ask more women or more people of color or things like that. And seek out those voices that you may have a harder time reaching through an open call. So we always do some of that. And then similarly, the open call, I always get things that I never would have thought to have asked somebody about. There are always talks that are unique, and I don't know how I would ever have found those people or those talks or ideas otherwise. People just have to wander in. So it's a matter of combination of both of those. And then we usually try to have somewhere between 10 and 20 reviewers. And I try to get sort of a diverse panel of people, both diverse in a couple different ways. People who are like, try to get some people who know stuff about AI and some stuff, web dev and backend dev and databases. And so I have a diversity of tech familiarity, different language stacks, things like that. And then also people, people who I hope reflect the audience that we're looking for as well, because they're, I want to have an audience that I want to have topics that appeal to a lot of different people. So, so we try to get kind of a wide range of voices there, and we let them sort of rate however much they want to do. And so we've definitely have people that go through and they'll rate every talk. And a typical year for Strange Loop is about 500 talks that get submitted. This year was about 300, just because we're doing a bit smaller and times are weird and things like that. So they go through and they, rate the talks, and you can add comments if you want to. And after all of that happens, then basically the organizers get together, and we do most of it in one very long night, usually with a couple of follow-ups. But we kind of use all those rankings to start with an initial sort order. It just gives you some idea. And usually it's, the stuff that's all at the very top, everybody liked it. So you can go through them relatively quickly and just agree that we all like these. So you might take, 40 talks that way, just by these are the things that most people liked. And then the bottom half or so, usually most people didn't like them, but we go through them carefully. And so in particular, I look for ones that like if one of the reviewers rated a talk of 5, we're going to look at it, like somebody really liked it. We're going to go take a second look at that, even if everybody else gave it a low ranking. And actually sometimes you get those talks that are mostly 1s and 5s, and those are interesting. There's reasons for that. Sometimes it's because somebody's making a controversial opinion and that might be an interesting talk. It might be that, people really liked this idea, but they were unsure about what it would be like. It would depend a lot on who the speaker is, what that talk would look like. And so we'll look at those. And then the organizers also go through and rate and review everything without looking at, and so all that stuff, I didn't mention this, but all the reviewers are looking at blind submissions. So it's just title, abstract, and comments for the reviewers. There's no bio information or anything attached to that. So the organizers do that as well. And then when we're going through the second pass, we do start looking at some of the bio information and pulling that sort of thing in. And sometimes that helps, but you're like, oh, this talk is by the guy who created it or whatever. so you get more, there's more background info there, and a lot of times that helps fill in pieces that were missing in the title, the abstract, a little bit. And sometimes that's something where I end up going back to speakers and saying, I didn't get this bit of context from your abstract, but I think it's important. Like, can we add a line or two to the abstract, or change the title a little bit, or something like that? Which is, I've been doing that work all weekend. So it's very top of mind, working with speakers to kind of clean those things up and make them a little bit better.
Nudge them in the right direction.
Yeah.
Cool,
but then you end up then you get to the hard part, which is the middle. And there's so cutting down to about twice the size of the program is pretty easy. So like this year we're taking basically 45 talks. And so cutting it down to about 100 or so, it's pretty easy. You can do that in a few hours. And then cutting it down from there to one program is usually takes a multiple of that to really get through all those. And I end up reading those abstracts multiple times and looking through that. And in the end, it's me making the final decisions on most of those things in the middle, and a lot of the selections. And it's really tough because when you get to that point, really, I would take any of those talks, So it's not like these are things that are on scope. People liked it, the topics are good. It's just a matter of, we are selecting for balance to build a program that reflects what we want to reflect and covers topics in the industry. We don't want like 3 talks from the same person, and we don't want like 10 talks from the same company. And so you're trying to balance all these different concerns. And occasionally, sometimes it gets down to like, it's 3 people from Japan, and flying them here would be expensive, and that sort of thing. That's usually not, that's rarely an issue, but it's a process. I was thinking last week that I have done this enough times now, between Strange Loop and Clojure West and Clojure Conj and Lambda Jam. Like, I've probably read 10,000 abstracts at this point, which is kind of terrifying, actually.
Would you say maybe it's a strange loop?
It feels like it sometimes. It feels like some kind of
give talks. Just keep going back and forth.
And yet somehow I'm terrible at writing abstracts. So I have not learned any of the lessons. I can read them and critique them very well, but I'm still pretty bad at writing them. So it's hard.
So I think you mentioned this to me in person, but I really like where the name Strange Loop came from. There is I guess I'll fill our audience in. There is a book called Gödel, Escher, and Bach. You may have heard of it. It's by Douglas Hofstadter, and it covers the concept of I am a strange loop and the concept of I. And it's very extensive, very large book. And then he wrote a follow-up called I Am a Strange Loop. And my understanding, what you told me, is that it is named after that book. Can you tell me more about that inspiration?
Yeah, and it really combines several things. So I was looking for something that had like STL in the title because it's in St. Louis. So Strange Loop has that. So that's kind of built in a little bit. And then it was the very first year we did the conference was in it was in the area of St. Louis called the Loop, which is it's an old trolley loop. And actually, since then, they actually have brought the trolley back. And there is actually a trolley going through the loop again, although that's been quite a controversial topic here in St. Louis. So it did not go very well so far.
A trolley. Okay. I'll have to.
A trolley. Streetcars. Yeah. And then I was trying to figure out what the name it was, and I was actually reading I'm a Strange Loop at the time. And so that kind of all those things kind of came together, and I said that's a name that sounds maybe a little programmery because it's got loop in it, but it doesn't have any, like, most people do not have this association with anything, and it sounds a little strange and a little different. So I thought it would stick out to people, and I think it has worked out pretty well for that. So
yeah.
And the really cool thing was that we, a few years into the conference, we were actually able to get Doug Hofstadter to come out to the conference and did a talk about Strange Loops at Strange Loop. So cool. The same year, I actually commissioned a piece by David Stutz, who I was familiar with his work through David Stutz. Am I saying his name right? No, totally. I'm going to look it up because I don't say the wrong name. Yeah, David Stutz. Are you familiar with Neil Stephenson's Anathema book?
No, I'm not. Fill me in.
Oh, well, so it's a great book. But it kind of takes place in this sort of Earth-like world where there are all these people living in sort of a monastery, but it's people who, different parts of the sort of monastery are people who live, who are part of it for different amounts of time. And there's one group who are the 10,000ers who live for 10,000 years or whatever. And, but anyways, they all kind of meet in the middle and they do these sort of Gregorian chant type songs. And so David Stutz is this fascinating guy who does a lot of math oriented composition, music composition. And he wrote an entire CD worth of music that is based on Neil Stephenson's Anathema. It's called Iolet. And it's all sort of Gregorian chant type stuff, but like some of it's based on algorithms for approximating pi or the four color theorem or stuff like that. Yeah. And it's awesome. It is. And some of it's got like throat singing in it, and it's really cool. And so I contacted him. I was like, so I got this idea. And like, I just cold emailed him, and he kind of got excited about it. And I said, I'll pay for it, whatever it costs for you to, do this composition and then actually stage it at the conference. So he wrote this crazy thing called Thrown for a Loop, which is all based on Doug Hofstadter's books, like a bunch of them, a bunch of the ideas. And it has, and he put together a cast. He wrote brass pieces for a brass quintet. We hired a local brass quintet, a great brass quintet. What? And it's like a 40-minute piece. It has a woman an aerialist who's hanging from, ribbons from the ceiling, doing part of it. And it's on Vimeo, actually. We're going to move it over to YouTube, but you can actually go watch it. We recorded it with 5 cameras and made a great recording of it. And Doug Hofstadter was there sitting next to me in the audience watching it. And it was totally insane. And I went home from that Strange Loop and I was like, I'm done. What else can I do? Like, this is as good as it gets. So
yeah. I can imagine. What year? When was that? What year was that?
That was, I want to say it was 2014, maybe something like that. Around that era. Might have been a year or two different than that. But yeah. But it was that was a trip, and I really did not have much knowledge of the piece at all. And he showed up, and I actually did not meet him in person until I walked out to introduce him on the stage at Strange Loop. Like, he was in town doing rehearsals, and it was just one of those things where I was doing other things with the conference, and I never crossed paths with him. And what he said to me as he was going on stage was, you were like the most trusting person I've ever met. Like, this guy that I cold emailed, and he wrote like this whole 40-minute piece, and I never saw any of it or heard any of the music or anything like that. But it all worked out. It worked out great. So
yeah. I mean, it sounds like it was a great piece. It's funny, ever since you mentioned that, I've been listening to Strange Loop, and it's when you're talking about Douglas Hofstadter, I'm picturing in my mind, I've seen his picture and his voice, the voice on the audiobook, and I'm realizing that's not his voice.
Oh, yeah, that is confusing sometimes. Yep. I am right now listening to Ready Player 2, the sequel to Ready Player 1, and it's read by Will Wheaton, which I didn't realize, and I got about 20 minutes into it, and I'm like, I know this voice. And I was like, oh, it's Will Wheaton. That's who it is. Which is kind of funny because it's all about pop culture references and stuff. And I think Star Trek is mentioned a couple times in the book. So he's
cool.
He's kind of referencing himself slightly.
So anything cool for this year's Strange Loop? I know y'all are probably kind of keeping it. It's hard to plan anything. Probably keeping it pretty low key.
Yeah. So as far as there's nothing super special or unique planned this year. Just trying to keep it manageable and get through the year. Yes, exactly. So being very careful about the budget because we're pretty scraping the barrel right now as far as the coffers go. After not doing one last year. But one of the big things we're doing is that we're doing another round of the TLA Plus conference, and TLA Plus is a language for doing formal specifications and verification, that kind of stuff. And we did the TLA Plus conference, came and co-located with us 2 years ago, and it went really well. And so they're coming back this year, and we're actually going to have a tutorial day, actually the pre-conference day, where you can come and learn about that and then go to that. So we're doing that again this year.
Pre-conference day, like Thursday, or like pre like Wednesday?
On Wednesday.
Pre.
Yeah. I have never done anything on that day before, so I've been working on trying to update the website and make it clear what's happening there. It's always hard to kind of get the overall big picture out there to people. It's all in my head, but it's hard to get it out to people. Well,
if we can find, all right, we need to get Fork Dudes all the way over in Europe. We need to get a band together. Oh, we can get Rich Hickey with the sombrero. We could get you. We can get you.
I don't think you'll get Rich with a sombrero, but with an electric guitar, sure.
Electric guitar?
You could get that. All right.
Y'all do that, and I will.
I'm a bad guitar player, but Rich is a very good guitar player, so you should definitely let him handle those parts. My main instrument is actually viola, so if you got any viola parts, cool. I can do that.
That's cool. Well, y'all do that. I'll do the aerial or fire, dealer's choice there.
That'd be cool.
And we can make it happen. We'll do it on the pre-party day.
We have thought about it a few times for the conch to have some night where we just got a bunch of instruments on a stage, and if everybody wants to come and jam and do that. Yeah. So maybe someday we'll make that happen.
You kind of have the board game night. I did want to ask you, so tell me about the board game night and kind of how that was born. Do you know? Was that whose idea?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there is a strong board game culture at Cognitect. There are a bunch of very avid board gamers there.
I saw the board game closet. I was able to help carry them out for some reason.
It has continued to grow, so it's I think they're going to need another closet or something like that. So yeah, there are a bunch of very avid board game aficionados at Cognitect. Rich is one of them, but also, I mean, there's a bunch of people. So and so and I think actually the board game night was Rich's idea. If it was not, he certainly was a strong proponent of it because he wanted some way for people to get together and hang out, but not for it not to be a typical, wander around drinking kind of thing, but being some way that people could interact in a different kind of a way. And so it's good for that. I'm not an avid board gamer, but I do enjoy playing board games, but not quite at the level of most of the people at Cognitect.
Well, let me tell you, next year I am bringing my favorite game. It's called Cat Ladies.
Oh, I haven't heard of that one.
Oh, you have heard of that one?
No, I have not heard of it.
Oh, well, you should hear about it. It's great. It's a game where you're a cat lady and your goal is to collect cats and feed them. But don't collect too many cats, because if you can't feed them, they count against you. It's going to be a smash hit. I can only.
Good. I'm in. I'll play.
I can only imagine. Oh, yes, cat. This is the cat lady's game. Everyone walks up okay, so you're this cat lady. You're this cat lady, and
that sounds good to me.
Do you have any pets?
I have 2 dogs, yeah. So you might hear them in the background right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have a 150-pound Great Dane and another smaller mutt. But
whoa.
Yeah, he's a big boy.
You should have told me that way ahead of time so we could have him on. So we could have him here because I need to see this. The big puppy. The big puppy dog.
He is a big puppy.
Is he slobber? Is he a slobberer?
Yes, at times. He's yes. He's very loud, so yeah. He's hard to ignore. But he's a big baby. He comes sleeps with us sometimes.
Oh, do you have to, take out an extra bed? I've seen people they have a king bed, and then, they attach the twin bed, the end of it, because their Great Dane insists on sleeping. Yes,
that is a thing. We did upgrade our bed after we got him, because he was sleeping with us early on, and it was not big enough. So we did upgrade, and it was not enough. I mean, he's like another person, except a person with like 4 legs that are like 3 feet long. So he's always kicking you in some way or another.
Is he good with other dogs? Do you go on puppy play dates and whatnot?
Pretty good. So yeah, he does okay most of the time.
That's cool. Well, maybe all right. See, we'll have the backyard barbecue. Y'all play music. I'll do some performance art. We can see the dog. It's all coming together now.
Sounds like a plan for me. I'd invite you over for Strange Loop, but I'm usually busy. So
I would imagine so. I am very excited for Strange Loop this year. I have never been, and I've heard so many good things about it. And it's going to be really cool to get back out at conferences again. Just people, hello, how are you? Not over Zoom. This is great, but people. It's going to be.
Yes, it will be. Yeah, I was surprised actually how much I missed people last year. So there is kind of a usual crowd of people, that a lot of people that I don't see in person other than at Strange Loop or things like that I've known for years, and I'm looking forward to seeing people again. I hope that things continue to move in good directions health wise, and that we can have a semi-normal conference at least.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, it'll be fun. So
I think everybody is trying to negotiate how to re-enter somewhat normal life right now. I've been in a few situations just in the last few days where I haven't done this in a long time. It feels really weird. So
yeah, we are at a interesting point. It's funny, everybody talked about the new normal. I don't think we ever had. First of all, what baseline normal did we ever have? There's always some sort of current events or something influencing people's behavior. But yeah, I don't think the world's ever going to be the same, but we can adapt. That's kind of the beautiful thing about people in society is, we adapt, we keep going, we, create these new experiences. And, I have faith in our community that we will find a way to get together and talk about nerdy stuff and drink beer and play board games, and it's gonna be super great. So let's see. Any last? Oh, I know. Last question. Last thoughts for you. Do you have any cool or interesting hobbies or interests or anything that we nobody knows, we wouldn't know about you?
Don't know. Not anything too crazy. We've talked about some of them already. I play music occasionally, do board games occasionally, and things like that. Spend a lot of time hanging out with the kids, though, or trying to hang out with the kids when they'll let me. So we have our little things we like. So
I guess that's another question I did wanted to get, and we kind of touched on diversity in the community and the open source developers, and then we also kind of touched on your wife manages a center for dyslexic kids. Is it kids or adults or just anybody with dyslexia?
But it's mostly kids. Yeah.
Do you feel that your personal experiences with your kid and helping them explore life being neurodivergent? Has that helped poise you to be able to be as supportive as, I assume you are, your actions show that you are, to others who, aren't like, I'll put it this way, aren't like the normal people you see, whatever normal means. But
yeah, I think the idea of normal is broken to start with, but
right.
Everybody's got their own, their own past that's just unique and different and that sort of thing. And, I think so. I mean, so I guess one other big area of my life that I didn't mention was scouting. So both my boys were in scouting. My older son is getting close to his eagle, and I was served as the scoutmaster in the troop and various other roles. And so I've done a lot of scouting as an adult. I did not do it as a kid, really. But it's something that I have found to be very rewarding personally. And like, how do you, build a troop that respects a lot of different kinds of people and, is tolerant of, people from different backgrounds and people who might be on the autism spectrum or might, or whatever. So, and it's challenging at times. So, there's been a few times that were very challenging in the troop, with working through those kinds of things with different kids. And I do feel like it's given me a lot of, I've learned a lot and gotten a lot of patience from it. And how to, stay calm and try to give high empathy when it's needed, which is, with my youngest has dyslexia and a lot of times it's, and he's not just dyslexic, but also, has ADHD and anxiety issues and different stuff at all. And it's common for those kinds of things to co-occur. And a lot of times it's kind of just overload, he's overloaded with, worry, concerns, emotions, whatever, and he's responding to you in an angry way or in a whatever way, he's reacting, but that's not really what he's feeling. He's really feeling overloaded. And so it's helpful for me to be able to keep that at the top of mind. And like, what I'm seeing is not actually, it's a consequence. It's not like it's a coping thing. It's not the actual problem. And so if we can kind of ride it out through that, sometimes you can get back to the point where it's, working on, we just got to get this essay done tonight or whatever it is, So, and I would say the other thing that plays into that is that I'm a humanist. I belong to a local humanist congregation. I really believe strongly in the worth of people and the ability of people and their ability to do great things. And I believe more in that than just about anything else. And, and so if I can start from that, that fundamental intrinsic worth that every human has, then I think if you start from there, that's a good place to start. So, and we've had things come up at Strange Loop, for example, where somebody heard something in a talk and it made them upset. And almost always we've been able to, have a conversation or initiate a conversation between two people. And a lot of times it's just misunderstanding. It's just human miscommunication. And it's not even one person, trying to hurt another person. It's just, someone misunderstanding or things like that. And, so we usually try to approach it from that direction first, if at all possible.
Well, that is so beautiful. You said that you don't really consider yourself, you don't like the title community leader, but everything I've heard, I beg to differ, Mr. Miller. I think you're exactly the type of person that, we need leading us and showing us the way, so to speak.
Well, I don't know about all that, but I just try to fumble my way through this whole thing just like everybody else. But try to do my best to be helpful and kind, and those are good places to start.
Yeah, well, those are good places to start, and I think that this is a good place to end. It's been about an hour now. Do you have any last thoughts? Anything you want to share with our listeners? Anything you'd like to say?
Not really. I one thing that I just shared this on another podcast the other day, that I really have been enjoying working at Nubank and getting to work with people in Brazil and Colombia and Mexico and other parts of the world on a daily basis. And it's really, I've learned a lot, just being, working closely with people who are, in much different situations than my situation, and our fortunate situations here in the United States. I have everything I need and feel very fortunate in my life. And in particular right now, we have vaccines readily available everywhere. That is not the case everywhere in the world. Some places in the world are in such, would give anything to be able to get those vaccines that are available here. And so I would just urge everybody, if you have access to that in the United States or elsewhere, that you take advantage of it and help us all collectively move towards getting rid of this virus, because it is really devastating in a lot of parts of the world right now.
Yeah, second that. All right, folks. Well, we will be back in another week or two with another amazing guest. And we will see you next time. Alex, don't hang up.